This video is meant to be an instructional video for people that may end up picking up one of these from me. These are called the Driftwood router template method, aka the router system. Got it. I wasn't quite ready to be on camera, but I'm just going to go ahead and get this done because I put it off for a couple of days. So just bear with me as I do this process, and I'll do my best to make this as informative as possible. So here we go. Just because I just realized it'd be useful. One important thing to do when you're doing anything with these is to clean your workspace, because you don't want to have any issues with stuff out of your control, or just basically clean your shit. So yeah, we're going to do that now. Ready? Here we go. Okay, once you're done doing that, and you get the cords out of the way, because you're a fucking idiot and left them up there. Okay, so, one thing that's important to keep in mind about these is that the boards will obviously have their own predetermined wheelbase, determined by the mold that you guys use. And the templates, whichever you end up getting, I will make it fit for the wheelbase, but they won't obviously fit other ones. It's not adjustable. These are two different size wheelbases. This is for my potential shape. This is for my kinetic shape. And they're easy to interchange if the wheelbase and your boards match. Say, for instance, this wheelbase for this shape, which is like a medium style shape, was the same as this higher kick shape. If the wheelbase where the holes are matched up, you could just use those boards on this, but it doesn't work that way if they don't match. So keep that in mind. The first step with these is going to be drilling the boards, because you obviously need to have the holes drilled out so that you can actually put it on the template. And obviously you guys should know this by now, but just for you guys to say that. So let's go ahead and get to work on that. After you get your boards drilled, you're going to want to sand the bottom right where the holes in the ends are. The reason why is that if you sand those, it'll be easier to get them onto this pin method, so I definitely recommend doing that. Once the holes on your board have been cleared out, you should have either one or multiple of those boards set aside ready to go to use in these templates. This is optional, but if you have a bandsaw, there's a step that will make your life a whole lot easier that's very important. If you don't have a bandsaw and you have, like, say, a scroll saw, that could work too. Or if you want to take it to, like, a hand and belt sander, you could even probably do the step that way as well. But this is the method that I use personally. What that step is, you take a board, find which one is going to be the nose side, and take it to your template, and you stick it on there. So it just pops into place. Should have no issue. There shouldn't be really much resistance to get it on. And you can see that by looking at the bottom side, there's a lot of excess material. Your router can go through that material with ease, but when using a template like this, all that extra material can, not that it will, but it can cause stress with you trying to get it to cut and not get your finger in the machine, because it's a very, very tight area to be working with. Obviously, if you're using a router setup like this, which, let me get the light source over here, you're going to have your fingers real close there, and I just don't personally like doing that with a big chunk of material. So what I normally do is I will take the board, and you can trace it, you can just run it upside down with the, bandsaw blade next to it. There's a couple different ways you can do it, but I generally just cut off a little bit of the extra material on the outside. So when I take it to the router, there's not that much material to cut off. It just makes life so much easier. If you were to trust yourself and take it to a belt sander, you could actually definitely sand it down to a smaller shape before you run it on there. But personally, that's just what I do. The step is completely optional, and I just don't think that it's something that everyone has to do, but I definitely would recommend it, so yeah. Okay, so the ones I'll be using for the example, you can see I did trim some of the excess material off of, and personally, that's just what I always do. it makes life for myself a lot easier than trying to do the full rectangle. You can router these, like, obviously, but this is what I personally do for my personal one. So, like, it's just my method. And I will make a note right here now before I forget to say it in the video. If you're planning to use these router templates for, like, mega production, say you're routering, like, 20 boards a day, something big, not to be mean, but I would recommend using a different method than these templates. Like, these could work for that number, don't get me wrong. That's something I feel very confident I could do myself. But I personally would say if you're going to do a giant number of boards or something you're planning to use long-term, like this is your main shape for your brand, maybe if you have an NFB mold, consult Jim after you get an experimental one made through me and take those dimensions and get one made through him, because a Corian template will work a lot better and last longer than these ones will. These ones will last as long as you need them to, as long as you take care of them, but like, I just would rather say now that maybe a different template would be better if you're going to be doing a high quantity of production. So, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get the thing set up for the next part. The next part is the most important part. This is the part I want people to definitely watch. So, here we go. Alright, so this next part is arguably the only point of this whole video, but I figured I should do the rest of the beginning part to explain it. We'll see how it actually comes out, but this step's the most important. This is the router setup that I personally use. It is a 1-inch flush cut bit with a bearing at the bottom. If you don't have that type of bit and you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure I can look at the listing that has all the details for it, and I can get that to people if they need be. But that is personally what I use. I just use a simple, I think it's a 3-speed router, I don't know exactly, with a simple Craftsman Deluxe router table. And personally, I have this clear material on the top of the surface, and the reason why I do is that I actually cut a hole. Oh god, I keep getting the angle bad, sorry, but I cut a hole down here for the bit to come through, so that when I'm running a template on here, even the, like, you know, the NFB templates, it's better to have something there. And I also put some extra material down there to get it to be flush, so it's nice and flat when the template runs against it. So I did a little bit of customization, but this is a standard fence that came with the router table. Some people make some custom ones. Personally, I just use what came in the box, and it works fine for me. So this next step, I'm going to try and find a way to rig up my camera so you can see it. It'll be me basically operating the template. So here we go. I decided to do an audio overlay at this point in the video to kind of give some explanation as to what's going on during the segment. Also, I figured it'd be better than having, you know, the audio, the router going on in the background. I just pointed out there that it's good to have some ear safety equipment. It's a really good idea because you don't want to go and damage your ears in the long run. And when using a router bit with a router template for a fingerboard, it's very important to do gradual but confident movements with the board against the bit. This is true with both the popsicle shapes and cruiser shapes alike. It's just very important to be cautious, be mindful, but be deliberate about what you're doing, because the bit can very easily grab into the material you're working with and pull it out of your hands if you don't have a very confident and certain grip about what you're doing. It's always important to keep a mindful approach to what you're doing and not just, you know, get comfortable. You never want to be comfortable with the machine. A machine is a very dangerous but very effective one. So I did the cutoff versions just earlier before, and at this point now I'm doing the rectangular versions. And one of the biggest reasons why I tend to do the cutoff version is just a lot easier to do those with less resistance. You'll see actually this part right here, I'm going very slow in comparison to the first cruiser with the second one because it's cutting off so much material. And I personally just feel that it's a lot easier to have to work with less material and less resistance. So that's just what mindful approaches I would recommend, and that's just what I'd say about it. So I'm going to go ahead and let it cut back to the video right about now. When I was doing these ones, I felt little to no resistance with the excess material on the outside of the boards, because there wasn't much there to begin with. When I ran this one, which is a popsicle shape, I didn't have much trouble. I was actually very impressed, because I normally never do that. Like, I think when I first started doing these templates, I did it that way, but after a while I was like, that's dumb. But that was no problem, but this one actually gave me a lot of issue, because there's so much material being taken away from the normal shape because of the small cruiser, that I actually found the material almost going around the bit because of how much was, like, you know, excess. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't personally recommend doing the full rectangle version for, say, smaller boards or cruisers or stuff like that, because it's just easier if you have access to the machine to cut the extra material off. Now, I understand if someone doesn't, and the router is the only thing they have because that's what they put their investment in, and that's completely fine. If you're gonna go that route, like you saw with the video, just take your time, be confident, but be careful, and just take your time with it. It's just a patient thing. It's super important to just be patient. But yeah, no, this is the method. This is what I do. The boards come out, in my personal opinion, super solid. I haven't had any serious issues. This also allows people to do experimental shapes and whatnot, because when doing experimental shapes, say this one for instance, this is a 34.5 by like a 97.25. If I didn't like that, it only cost a couple of bucks in comparison to buying a full NFB template, or even like a 3D printed one. Like, this is still the cheaper method, and it allows for multiple shapes, experimentation, testing, stuff like that. It's really fun. But yeah, I'll wrap it up there. Hopefully this helps out the people it needs to, so yeah.